So there is this thing in MMA that wrestling is the best base to have if you want to dominate and of course almost never lose. And of course we had a lot of champions that come from freestyle wrestling or even Greco-Roman wrestling, like Brock Lesnar, John Jones, Daniel Cormier, Henry Cejudo, Kamaru Usman, etc. But certainly they didn't really become champion because of their wrestling. Like if you look at the sport of wrestling, of course we have like a different type of styles. We have like freestyle wrestling, we have Greco-Roman wrestling, we have folk style wrestling, and of course in MMA the most useful one is of course freestyle wrestling, because in freestyle wrestling you score points by taking somebody down by their legs, of course, and then you pin them down for 3 seconds. And of course in MMA the space or the distance where you're fighting it is so much bigger and wider. That's why the freestyle wrestling is one of the best wrestling styles to implement, because shooting double legs, for shooting single legs you can close the distance a lot better and a lot faster. But in MMA, as said, by taking somebody down and pinning them on the ground, in MMA the fight of course continues. So it's like, and then what? And then what? So I would like to go over some points in this video why I think wrestling has a bit of a problem, and also is a bit, quite frankly, is a bit overrated in my eyes. Of course, first point I want to make is, already been talking about, is like the distance in MMA compared to a freestyle wrestling match. In freestyle wrestling, of course you're way more close to each other. Of course you start hand fighting with each other, so you're almost like not even a meter apart from each other. You're way more crowded, because of course you need to defend the takedowns, because that's the only thing you need to worry about. And if you look at MMA, the distance is so wide. I mean, in any combat sports, when it comes to kickboxing, boxing, or anything, MMA is the most distance you're ever gonna have to cover up, or you want to keep it at, in any combat sports, because you have to worry about kicks, punches, and of course takedowns. If you look at a straight kickboxing match, they even are almost like glove to glove to each other. Same with Muay Thai, same with boxing, and of course, as I said, with wrestling, that's the same thing. So that leads up to, of course, setting your takedowns better. Because if you start shooting takedowns from like 5 meters apart and you're not setting it up with your punches, of course your opponent is going to see it a lot more faster. So he can get the underhooks a lot more better. He can reverse the position, he can press down the head, he can sprawl, he can defend the takedown a lot better, because you're not setting the takedowns, quite frankly, good up, because your distance is way wider than it normally is in a straight freestyle wrestling match or a Greco-Roman wrestling match. So you need to have good striking, so you can set up and you can get into the takedowns. That's why being a good striker is important. You need to learn how to feint, you need to learn how to really get a reactive reaction out of it. That's why sometimes you have to commit to the strikes, that's why you have to press forward. So that's why the striking ability is very important to make your wrestling ability even work, to even get to a takedown. Because if not, let's say your opponent is a striker that has his hands a little bit lower. Let's say you fight for example, like a Cyril Gane, who has his hands a lot lower. He can get the underhooks a lot quicker, and he can reverse the position a lot better. We've seen it in the freaking fight against Tom Aspinall, even though there was the fucking eye poke, but you saw it. Tom Aspinall tried to attempt the freaking double leg, but because Cyril Gane has his hands always low, because he likes to strike that way, he get the underhooks a lot better. So Tom Aspinall should have set up the takedown a lot better instead of just blasting through it. And that's already talking about my second point, is like, if you cannot set up your takedown, it doesn't really matter if you're really great or a fantastic wrestler. You know what I mean? Like, if you cannot set up your takedown, it doesn't matter, because it's because of the distance you need to cover up. So anybody that is training in an MMA gym, gets to learn how to fucking get underhooks, gets to know how to maybe sprawl a little bit if you're a little bit athletic, of course. But get to the underhook, get the hands together, pressing down the head, changing the body weight, like that is always learned in the MMA gym. And I see that if you're wrestling your double leg, your single leg, any shot is pretty poorly attended, everybody can defend that. So that's why, striking is very important to get to your wrestling. You need to feint, you need to commit to your strikes, you really need to get your opponent reacting. So that's why striking is maybe as important as, as of wrestling as of right now. Of course, let's say you do get somebody down. It's then like, and then what? And then what? Like, people always like to say, guys like, for example, Khabib or Islam are these dangerous wrestlers, which is partially true, but not their main point why they're so dangerous on the ground. It's because simply they're dangerous on the ground because of their jiu-jitsu. It's not wrestling what they're doing on the ground when they're having the top pressure. Someone like Khabib is so good of having the top pressure, of having amazing ground and pound, maybe one of the best ground and pound I've ever seen in MMA, and that is not wrestling. That is just simply a totally different sport. We're talking now about, jiu-jitsu, like, fundamentally placing jiu-jitsu, We're not talking about wrestling anymore. Wrestling is taking somebody down and like pinning them for 3 seconds, and then we're just doing something else. If I take somebody down and I ended up in half guard, we're doing jiu-jitsu now. This is not wrestling anymore. So it's like, both of them, of course, they come from combat sambo, where they're really good grapplers, because you get takedowns, you learn how to hold somebody down. Of course, you learn a couple submissions, of course, in combat sambo as well. But most people will call this like, elite wrestling, and you need to have elite wrestling. It's like, if you look at the champions right now, like Joshua Van, a freaking like a boxer, MMA fighter, but particularly boxing. He's not wrestling anymore. Petr Yan, boxer, Muay Thai, kind of hybrid, of course. And even then, you saw when he fought Merab Dvalishvili, the combat sambo fighter. But Merab, of course, has the better takedowns. But Petr was fucking scoring him, because why? I will get to that point later on. Featherweight, Alexander Volkanovski, former rugby player, but mostly liked to strike. 155, Ilia Topuria. First really wrestler where we can talk about, but Ilia doesn't use it. Of course, he has the Greco-Roman background, but Ilia likes to box. Heavy boxer, best KO artist ever. We don't need to talk about his fucking accolades. But welterweight, Islam Makhachev. Islam Makhachev also comes from combat sambo. It doesn't come from traditional wrestling, combat sambo. Middleweight, Khamzat Chimaev, the first traditional wrestler we can talk about. The first traditional wrestler, because why? Khamzat Chimaev, is a national Swedish champion in freestyle wrestling. And light heavyweight, Alex Pereira, glory kickboxer. And then, of course, the belt's now vacant, so you got Yuri Prask and Carlos Ulberg, who both are strikers. And then heavyweight, of course, you got fucking Tom Aspinall, and right there you got Cyril Gahn, and right there you got now Alex Pereira as well. So you got all strikers, because Tom Aspinall, is a very heavy, he's got good boxing. That's most of Tom Aspinall's game, is his boxing. So already you can see where there isn't really like this whole like crazy, like this guy had crazy wrestling accolades. But the guy we have mentioned, of course, is Khamzat Chimaev, and he got as I said, he's a national Swedish wrestling fucking champion. I'm from Europe, but I don't fucking know anything about fucking wrestling in fucking Sweden. In fucking Sweden? You think that's some fucking accolade, like that's some crazy accolade? But if you compare that though, if you compare Khamzat to someone like freaking Bo Nickel, who is a fucking 3-time NCAA Division 1 national champion, I mean, his wrestling is actually really fucking useless compared to Khamzat Chimaev. Like, if you look at Bo Nickel's last 3 fights, of course he fought Paul Craig. He poorly outstruck Paul Craig because Paul Craig only can throw a fucking body kick. Yeah, and then of course he faced off against Reinier de Ridder. And of course, Reinier de Ridder has way better jiu-jitsu. He's a really good jiu-jitsu practitioner as well. And of course, he is a bit of a better striker than Bo Nickal. So even, we saw Bo Nickal took him down, but that's not where you want to be, because now you're taking it to RDR's game, and of course RDR is a way better jiu-jitsu practitioner. So they end up on the feet again, and of course Reiner the Ritter finished him off with the knees to the body. And of course, after that he fought against Rodolfo Vieira. And of course, same with RDR, Rodolfo Vieira, way better jiu-jitsu practitioner than Bo Nickal. So there's no really a need from Bo Nickal to take him down. And luckily for him, he was the better striker at that time. So he ended up KO Rodolfo Vieira, of course. But you have seen in those last 3 fights, where was really Bo Nickal's wrestling? And where was it even, need to be? Like, where was it useful for? So it's like, compare that to Khamzat Chimaev, again, who is this fucking national Swedish freestyle wrestling champion. With all respect, the fuck is there wrestling in fucking Sweden? You know what I mean? But his fucking wrestling is maybe something you need to be frightened of. Because why? Because Khamzat Chimaev is the better all-around grappler. Khamzat Chimaev has way better jiu-jitsu, way better chain wrestling, and can set up the takedowns a lot better, because, quite frankly, I would say Khamzat Chimaev offensively is a better striker than Bo Nickal, So if you look at it, why wrestling can be good is because you need to be an all-round better grappler than just a pure freestyle wrestler or Greco-Roman wrestler, I said that the 2-time silver medalist, Olympian medalist, Yoel Romero never resorted to his freestyle wrestling background, because quite frankly, it's maybe one of the best accolades in wrestling to have, and then bring that to MMA. But what we have seen, Yoel Romero was a freaking striker. Of course, he's a fucking freak of a fucking athlete. So, he can pick up fucking striking in his fucking late 30s, which is fucking crazy. But as you've seen, Yoel Romero didn't have the fucking top control to have, amazing ground and pound. Didn't have no submission ability. Didn't really understand anything about jiu-jitsu, anything. So it's like, there is no need for him to, quite frankly, resort to his fucking jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? Like, he has a lot of great knockouts with the flying knees. But even if you look at his fucking boring ass fight against Israel Adesanya, is was the need for Yoel to take him down? I think he took him down once, and it was because he got cracked. Adesanya got cracked by a left hand. I feel like by Romero. So it's like, there's no need for you to take somebody down if you don't have the fucking submission ability, if you don't have the fucking top control ability to hold somebody down, or you don't even have the fucking ground and pound ability to really, make somebody pay for getting taken down by you. You know what I mean? At the 155 division, of course, maybe the most stacked division, always has been, lightweight division. Mateusz Gamrot is, in my eyes, the best freestyle wrestler and the best pure wrestler there is. He's better than Khabib, he's better than Islam, he's better than Arman even. Like I said, he's way better than Khabib. Like, if you look at the shots Khabib took in the fucking middle of the octagon, not the fence, middle of the octagon, it was fucking atrocious compared to fucking Mateusz Gamrot. Because why? Because Khabib comes from a fucking combat sambo background, and Gamrot comes from a freestyle wrestling background. That freaking match with Charles Oliveira really just sums up what I'm just talking about in this entire fucking video. You know what I mean? Like, of course, Charles Oliveira fought Mateusz Gamrot, and the match begins. Of course, Charles Oliveira, very good striker as well, very powerful striker. So Charles Oliveira's game always is just to fucking walk you down forward, heavy, Muay Thai style, constantly teeping you, trying to crack you with the right hand, of course. And Gamrot was, skirting on the outside, and of course, immediately, boom, shoots the single leg, and of course, gets Charles Oliveira down. But because Charles Oliveira may be one of the best, I don't even have to fucking tell you that, if you fucking watch the channel, you should know about it. But Charles Oliveira, of course, one of the best pure jiu-jitsu specialists in MMA history, of course. So, Gamrot takes him down. Charles Oliveira immediately jumps the guillotine. Of course, Gamrot pops right out of it. Immediately, Charles Oliveira jumps the omoplata, controls him on the ground, gets on top of Gamrot later in the round, and then gets the fucking rear naked choke almost. He attempted rear naked choke as well, and is just controlling Gamrot the entire round. Because why? You're now doing jiu-jitsu, you're not doing wrestling anymore. You took him down, fair. Chapeau, you fucking took him down. Well square, Gamrot, you took him fucking down. But now you're doing jiu-jitsu with Charles Oliveira, and that's not a fucking game you wanna fucking play, dude. So now Charles Oliveira is fucking jumping the gear to you, pop right. He's jumping a fucking omoplata. You fucking lucky it out. You fucking jumping a rear naked choke against you. Like he's constantly fighting. He's just manhandling you on the fucking ground. Like there's nothing you can do. It's just survive. And of course, round 2 starts. Now Matthijs Gamrot is thinking like, oh fuck this shit. I never want to take Charles Oliveira get down again. I don't want to fucking go on the ground with this dude again, because this dude fucking jiu-jitsu is way above mine. So I'm just fucking screwed around, you know. I'm just trying to survive basically. And then of course Gamrot doesn't have the striking ability as well. Like he doesn't have knockout power. He's not really competitive striking in the first place, you know. He has decent strike, but there's nowhere near being a really decent striker. You know, he's not a really good kickboxer or anything like that, you know. So now Gamrot is just basically survive, and he's getting pressed. And of course Charles Oliveira's game is just to press you forward, walk you down. And eventually Charles Oliveira shoots his own takedown. Fucking slams, lifts up Gamrot, slams it back down, chain wrestles him to the fucking ground. And of course gets the hooks in and gets the neck crank rear naked choke, and then he finishes off Gamrot. Again, this just shows you why just having only pure wrestling accolades is pretty freaking useless if you don't have anything else. Because wrestling is not a martial arts essentially to, you know, finish a fight. It's a martial arts to get you to another martial arts world. You know what I mean? Like for example, like if you're an Aljamain Sterling, or you're even a Charles Oliveira, where we just saw him recently, you know, against Max Holloway. You know, Charles Oliveira pressing Max Holloway forward. Max Holloway gets cracked a little bit, gets pressed up to the fence. Charles Oliveira shoots, and he gets the body lock, and then he gets to take him down. And of course, Charles Oliveira just, you know, gets him into the jiu-jitsu world. Essentially, of course, Max survived that beautifully, the 5 rounds. If you look at Arman fighting Charles Oliveira, of course, Arman won that fight on a split decision. But why did Arman win against with a split decision? Is because Arman is a way better grappler than Matthijs Gamrot. A way better grappler, not just pure wrestling, a way better grappling. Of course, their wrestling are pretty much equal. I'll say Gamrot's a little bit better, but Arman Tsarukyan way better jiu-jitsu, way better top pressure, nasty fucking ground and pound, and that's, you know, ended up why he was winning against Charles Oliveira, because he was also, first of all, a lot smarter of trying to take down Charles against the cage instead of, you know, in the open space. And of course he was landing the ground and pound, damage based scoring. He was landing the ground and pound. He was making himself tight and compact a lot better than someone like Gamrot. So that's why he was getting the better of it. But again, those things will help him. Winning the fight is not something to do with wrestling or anything like that. And even then, Charles Oliveira 3 times every single round lashed up a fucking submission. The guillotine, of course, the arm triangle, and of course, Darce choke. So every single round, Charles Oliveira even got a submission still. And you know, even if you look back at that fight, of course, Arman was very lucky every time with the rounds, and of course his fucking shorts. Jiu-jitsu specialist as well, the same thing. Wrestling is so important. If you want to get to your submission, as I said about Aljamain, about Charles Oliveira, we've seen it. You need to have those takedowns, and those guys are improving and are having those takedowns to get to submissions. Basically, you know, it's not always good to jump guard or just roll around. Of course, that's another video I want to make about why jiu-jitsu is a problem. But of course, if you look at someone like Ryan Hall, for example, you know, no takedown ability, literally just the purest of jiu-jitsu. He got some kicks, but even then, you know, of course, it was going well for him. But of course, after he went off against fucking Ilia Topuria, and then Ilia, of course after fucking Ryan how Imanari rolled on the fucking ground, instead of like backing away, Ilya just start ground and pounding him, and then of course he got knocked the fuck out. Because that's why it's also not good just to have no jump guard and everything like that. Because you know MMA has punches and elbows. Main point is like you don't need all these accolades to have to make essentially like your wrestling successful. In MMA, you don't need to be an NCAA champion or something, or an All-American, or a fucking national champion in the country, or an Olympian even. Like, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys. Suck it up. Ciao.